Here we all are. I didn't come here for a fight.
You should have stayed away, shouldn't you?
That's where it started.
Will you marry me?
No one is gonna believe a word you say.
It was me. I killed Keanu Taylor.
Why? Because Linda ain't a grass.
You pack your bags and you get out of this house!
She is my wife!
Oh my God. I belong to Eve.
Let her go.
You slept with her best mate!
Dirty little cab.
What you do?
Will you marry me?
Of course I'll marry her. Come here.
Me walking about with a fish on my head makes no sense at all without you here.
Oh, I need a cab. It's for Zach. The baby's coming.
Can't do it without you! Look at me! Yes, you can!
Got to put my girls first.
No.
Brittany and Dolly.
No, please, don't do
me
this.
and you. We're over.
I still have feelings for you, mine. I don't want to, but I do.
I'm really sorry, Stace. It's just bad timing.
I love you, Stace.
Oh, stop it! You're being
No, I love you. I always have.
He's dead, isn't he?
Yes. I love you, Martin. And you'll always have a place in my heart. I don't know how to say goodbye. Just say thank you.
She wasn't here, and then she shows up drunk.
I don't know how to stop her.
Sometimes you have to let them reach rock bottom.
The only one in charge of her future is her.
I just don't want to die, Mum.
It's like there's a battle going on, a war between here and here.
Where have you been?
Yeah, you're the problem. It's you. You twist people's heads and you get off on it. Get it to me. You've done it to all of us.
You need help.
I need peace.
Rolf, you don't have to do this.
I'm just not strong enough anymore, you know.
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell.
With dinosaurs, you and me, ain't no space left for us.
You're ready to go back into the world, Phil. You're ready to let all those people that love you in.
To do that to my woman.
He used his power and position to manipulate and violate me. Because of your courage, I have felt understood for the first time.
Get off me! Grandad!
This is Teddy Mitchell. He's your brother.
That is Peggy Mitchell, Phil's mum. The greatest Mitchell matriarch who will ever exist. Just so you know.
Teddy said you was keeping the name.
Well, as you can see by the lack of bald head and meat and two veg, I'm not Teddy, am I?
My Bonnie's dad.
Wait, no, please! Oh, no, please, no!
You've just made ourselves a new enemy.
Junior. Hello, Dad.
Elaine Peacock, you deserve a big, strong man who will love every little bit of you.
Excuse me, darling, there's no little bit of me.
You need to kill my boy!
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
They strip searched her.
Just told you, Mum.
I'm sorry. What?
Keep on coming between me and Sonia. I'm warning you, I'm not gonna stand for it.
Reese Colwell and Sonia Fowler. I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Deborah Colwell.
So I'm going to move in there, and I'm going to be his best mate. And then I'm going to watch him crack.
Leave me alone.
Bianca?
Dad.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, Bianca. Bianca?
It wasn't Bianca, was it? It was you.
Admit you did it and stop torturing me.
Why was the murder weapon found inside your flat?
They must have put it there.
Of
all the prison cells in all the towns.
You don't deserve family.
Oi! Leave my sister alone. I'm her family.
Hello, darling.
Nigel. Phil.
Pull yourself in, Mitchell. You are now.
There we go.
Bless you, Mo! Santa's coming!
Hello, Cindy. I'm Jane.
Where's Kim?
I need to get out! We're trapped! Help me!
You're my big, strong king, and I'm your lady in waiting.
I love you, Cat Slater.
Bobby.
Hey, relax, man. It was an accident.
So's this.
What's wrong with you? What are you doing?
So is it true? Do we have a son?
He's gonna need that transplant.
I'm pregnant. And I've been taking prescription painkillers, strong ones as well.
And you happy with that, are you? Just being my bit on the side.
That's not what I am. Good-looking bloke strolls by, gives you the eye. Straight on your back. Ding, ding, jump on board. You're cheap. You always were and you always will be.
You messed with me. Now you're gonna pay.
I do really love George. I told him how I felt. He turned me down. That's the reason I slept with Junior. That's the reason this whole thing started.
You are poison, Cindy. Toxic.
You.
Look, it's in the head!
Welcome to the world, Julia. It's all about to begin.